I've known Dan for quite a while, and then he's been gaining weight, and he's eating all this donuts, and it's no more monsters, no more donuts. He's got to lose that pot belly. It's getting out of hand. He's gonna get hurt climbing one of those tree stands. And no more of this stuff.
What are you doing with my monsters?
Just taking one out.
Hey, those are my donuts.
You're getting rid of these. No more of this for you, fat boy. You can't have that. You're it. That's it. You're losing 50 pounds before season starts.
Really?
Yeah, really. You got to deal with me, the new coach. Well, you worked hard. I guess you deserve a monster and a donut today. That's a good boy. You drink that water.
How do you like the new Slimmer Dan? Woo! I'm gonna have to bring back the walking stick to beat the girls off with. I should have did this a long time ago. I feel great. I know it's gonna help me this hunting season, but really, I was in denial. I didn't think that it would help me this much to lose 50 pounds. I didn't think it would help me this much in hunting, but I could feel it. I wasn't able to run anymore. I thought it was old age. I wasn't able to exercise like that anymore, and I thought it was just how old I was. And now, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling like I can run laps while I'm at work after the whole day. This is awesome. And if I can do it, you can do it too. I really want to see everybody embrace being more fit. Stop eating the stuff that causes cancer. Stop eating the stuff that's killing us. And start getting back into living the life we want to live. With that said, we've got a great show here coming up. I've always said that you have to be a detective when you're looking at how deer bed and when to hunt beds and stuff. And Mario did a little summer scouting, looked at some places in the summer, a little bit of hill country, a little bit of river bottom, a little bit of woodlot, brought all together in this one scouting video, and how he broke it down and his thought process as he goes through, because he had never been in these spots before. I think you're going to like this. You got to be a detective. You got to be able to ask the questions and answer when's the deer going to be there.
Hey everyone. Rick and I decided on this nice hot day to come out and grab a little quick scout. So this area is sort of a pseudo hill country for as high as the hills get here, down into a river bottom, and we're literally 100 yards off of the parking lot. There's a big brat fry going on over at the public park. But anyways, this knob, this elevation, tapers down into this corner over here to my right, which is actually pointing west. It tapers down into a point on elevation, and coming up on that elevation point there's a primary trail that runs right down the center of it, and there's multiple rubs coming into it. Some of them are generational, so from years past, and we found a few that look like they're from last year. Nothing super exciting about this. I mean, there are some beat down areas next to trees that we'll take you to show you where potential bedding could be. But it's just interesting. Everything funnels down off of this flat. You've got a mix of oak trees and a whole lot of buckthorn growing up underneath. So on these tops, like we talk about it being thick on top, there's definitely thick on top. So just as this elevation drops down behind us, there's a good heavy trail there, and you'll see little worn out areas which are old beds. We're not seeing any fresh hair in there like the deer are bedding in here now, but it could be a situation during the rut where you're going to get cruising that's going to happen on the tops, or you're going to get corralling of doe on these thick tops, and those bucks are going to cruise downwind of where those doe are corralling and circle them and chase through here. So it's a potential spot. Rick also spotted a little flag hanging off the tree on the other side of the hump here, which gives us an indication that hunters are coming in.
Yeah, not going too deep.
Some of the finer details that we're looking for when we're in here. So Rick's gonna swing as I walk over to this spot. You can see this buckthorn tree. Like we said, deer like to feed on this all year long. So here, pay attention to the details like this. You've got a small broken branch. You've got some browse on this buckthorn. All right. If you look down lower, there's browse here. There's browse here. Okay. All the tips of these are browsed off. All this is browsed off. So that's indicating to me that there's deer moving through here. You know, they're moving through here and they're laying down rub sign. So if it's doe, if you look at this area right below us, all right, just below me here, I've got worn out dirt pod here, here. I've got some right below the base of this oak tree, and another oak tree that's behind Rick has got a worn out base. So there could be doe bedding in here and sort of a circular situation. But the key is that if there's doe bedding in here and it's thicker, then bucks are going to come in later on in the year in that pre-rut, and they're going to be checking on this spot, checking on the downwind side of it. So, but again, pay attention to the details. The browse, you'll find the browse over time. Look at the rubs. Not every rub is made equal. We found some that are on an angle, a little bit lower, some that are higher. But there's definitely buck activity in this little corner 100 yards from the parking lot. So we came back onto this elevation only about 20 more yards. Again, as maybe you can see by the back, but it's starting to fill in here. It's getting a lot thicker. The rubs are still hitting on both sides of this primary trail that's really, it's on the north edge of this elevation because this flat goes off to my left pretty far. But you can see right down here, there's a number of spots that are matted down. This, you can see these little hairs in here. I'm going to presume that there was a fawn bedded in this spot. And you can see when I'm down in here, I mean, you're covered because of the way that this buckthorn grows up in here. And this stuff isn't even in full growth yet because we're still early in the summer. But once this gets growing up high and you get a lot of cover in here, you got to think about that when you're accessing it, because if there's a mature animal or any animal that's bedding here,
they're going to see it.
Yeah. If you get any sort of thermal rise coming up that, or the wind is shifted and the wind is coming out of the north, they're going to have you busted when you walk in down on the corner over there. But you can see the browse here. There's browse on all these trees right in here. All right, this little hilltop that Rick and I are scouting, I want you to think of it as in the shape of almost like a teardrop, right? So the first part, we came on the tip that's on the west side of it, and now we're on the tip that's on the east side of it. And the north has a really heavy trail that parallels right at the down sloping elevation. What's interesting about this is that even though we're only 150 yards from that west tip, all the buckthorn is growing through here with these mature trees, and it gets really thick behind me. And there's a lot of little low pockets, and it's all filled with beds. I think primarily there's a lot of doe bedding going on in this spot, but why this interests me is because of the way those trails parallel the outside of it. Because depending on a south wind, a north wind, you're going to get downside traffic from those bucks in the pre-rut are going to be wrapping around this point, smelling to see what the does are doing inside of here.
Yep.
And it's big enough where there's trails from that top point that drop down and they wrap around both sides and they come back up through the center of it. And then we've got trails that crisscross across the middle.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed.
And now directly behind Rick opens up into a real mature pine forest area, which is much more open. It doesn't have a lot of this underbrush, this buckthorn that's grown up. But again, we're really not that far at all from the parking lot, and this comes up about, 400 or 500 feet in elevation, and it's a really thick, flat top up here. A lot of the beds that we saw had hair in them. Some of them looked fairly immature, like fawn hair. But I kind of like it. I mean, there's multiple rubs throughout here. So there's obviously deer activity happening. I just think it's more of a pre-rut spot.
And access would be a little difficult.
Yeah. I mean, there were beds coming right up on the tip, but, we're kind of right in here in prime time. I'm not seeing any fresh tracks that we bumped anything. So in my mind, if I would come in here and hunt this, I'm looking, depending on the wind, to slide into that tip somewhere along that perimeter trail that runs it.
Okay.
Based on wind, and I'm looking for traffic. If I come in the morning, I'm planning on bedding happening in here, and I think stuff is going to get up, walk that parallel trail, and then drop down into that lowland, that swampy, marshy area. And I want to be right in that transition point where they're dropping down, or where I'm cutting traffic off on one of those main intersections. Like, we found that trail that runs along both sides, and then we found multiple crisscrossing trails. Find yourself where you can shoot to one of those crisscrossing trail areas.
There you go.
And again, you got a lot of cover in here. You're not going to get a 40-yard shot in here. You're going to get a 15-yard shot, and it's going to be at a pretty extreme angle. So
you're going to have to pick the right tree.
Yeah, and you might only get 12 feet off the ground. But back here behind me, you can see how thick it is. This can hold bedding. It can be a near parking lot secluded spot that everyone just kind of looks over. And not for nothing, but everyone's going to be drawn to those main trails. They're going to get on those main trails, walk those main trails, look at the rubs. But those rubs, could be done during night. They could be done during pre-rut just to mark where doe are crossing. So you got to think about time of year, when you would come in here. That's why I'm saying, for me, most of these beds in here, doe beds.
Yeah.
Bucks are coming in when doe are coming into estrus, and that's why they're being active in here. We're on that other hump that's basically east of us. We dropped down into the logging road, and now we're coming back up on the trail that crosses over the saddle and comes up onto this other hump. Rick, if you could slowly turn around and just point at that tree that marks the trail. Just talk to that, point that trail out right here.
Right there.
And there, that tree had a nice big rub on it. And
That
you can
one right
see the
there.
Run through there. This is rather obvious, but what's interesting here is we've got old generational rub on this tree.
Yep.
We come over to here, got an old generational rub right on this tree. Okay. If we walk across to where we've got this limb coming down, we've got all this broken off. These are these little details at all the different parts here. So again, this is a really obvious spot.
Yeah.
I would say that this is going to attract hunters
Right.
to this spot, but I would consider this a travel corridor. It's a travel corridor between what is likely to be bedding on top of this hilltop and corridor back to the bedding that we found that's on top of that hilltop.
Yep.
And I'm talking two different doe bedding areas. So bucks will cruise this to scent check the doe bedding areas. So here's another example here. We're just up the trail a little bit and you've got beat down areas all around the base of this tree. So what that tells me is that, you know, either a group of doe or a deer on a different wind is wrapping itself around on different spots in this tree. You know, it doesn't look to be that anything's bedding in here right now, but if you paw up the dirt a little bit, you can find hair in the bed.
Yep.
And the other thing I look for is when you get down in these areas, look at what's in reach. So if the deer's bedded here, it's just turning its head up and it's browsing on these stems. It's browsing up to here. You can see up to a certain height, none of this has new growth on it because it's been browsed so much by deer that are bedding here during a certain time of the year. Even some of this new stem is bitten off here. But we only cut across one set of tracks. There's no real tracks in the mud here, and it's rained in the last 24 hours, so I wouldn't think they're bedding here right now. I'm still sticking to my pre-rut scenario or rut scenario.
Okay.
Where you get bucks could be bedding in this location to monitor doe that are coming back and forth between these two humps, or you're getting doe bedding in these thicks, right? Because they want to stay away from that racked animal.
Mm.
And the bucks are cruising around the perimeter of it
Yep.
to scent check it on whatever side, depending on the wind, is the downwind side. Look at this here. I would say both these spots are scraped up.
Right there.
Prime time.
We had another one right here.
And again, you see how this filters in. You've got coming off that main trail on the down side of the hump. You've got those trails that are on the back side of this.
Yep.
And then it flattens up and then it comes on the downside. And what I would call this one's more of a community scrape because there's, if we look at this spot, this has got 1, 2, 3, 4 trails that all converge right to this spot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's running this entire ridge line. It all dropped off back behind Rick pretty significantly.
Yeah, I would say it's a community scrape.
So again, if pressure's on and things are bumped, you know, how you access this, you might have to walk all the way around and come up from the bottom. You do have a tree right here. You could hunt over the top of this scrape if your wind was blowing off back this way. But your thermals are going to pull on top of this and everything. So it's, you got to think about how they're using it. If something's going to come here or cross this to check what's in the area, where are they coming and where are they going, and that's where you want to intersect them. And those coming and going spots. Hunting right over the top of this scrape is probably too difficult of a proposition based on how this is set up and where the wind and the thermals are going.
Right. Thermals go down in the evening.
And hunting the low isn't necessarily a bad thing either. Rick and I just got off that little knob and we wrapped around. There's actually a human walking trail on the back side of it, which we could use to our advantage. Again, a lot of times the deer are going to tolerate you walking on hiking trails, especially in these public areas. But you can use those to your advantage to get into a position, a wind advantage, and then slip into the spot you got to hunt.
Good access.
We found this really heavy generational rub. It's on both sides of this. And actually, if you go along here, Rick can't see it, but directly behind him, there's another large pine tree that's got a rub. They're not high up. They're hit time and time again. There's another one on the tree behind there. And if we look right on this one,
Oh,
those
yeah.
branches are busted off.
Yeah, I see
And
it.
the back side of it,
Sorry.
back side of it has got rubs too. So what's interesting here, you've got an oak flat on that knob where it starts to descend down. So you've got food there. You've got bedding up behind it. And now you've got this open pine forest right here, these mature pines.
Right?
And right on the transition between the pines where it's open,
And
and if Rick slowly pans to my left, this gets really thick with undergrowth of buckthorn and smaller sapling trees. And from earshot, you know, I can see rub, rub, rub. I can even look back to that trail that I see going in there, and there's a rub on that tree. There's a rub on that tree. Here's your trail going in here,
Right there.
right there.
Right on the transition line.
So I can feel the wind kind of hitting, coming to my back a little like this.
It is.
So that's telling me, you know, we're coming from this direction over here. I'd somehow want to wrap all the way around this and slide in like this to hunt. I don't want to walk through this way.
Oh, no. No. But if the wind is coming this, yeah, I suppose.
I don't want to wrap from that backside and come in like this.
Okay. I see it.
Because in the evenings the thermals are going to start dropping and everything's going to drop kind of this way back into here, and if I'm tucked into a tree over there, my thermals should go back into the low. Well, this looks pretty good. Let's go walk further back in there to see how this looks as we get closer to the river.
Okay.
All right, so we just wanted to show you this one. This is another one of those rubs on that pine. Right on the transition from the open pine to the thick, small sapling trees and buckthorn. Rub, 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 all along this edge marking this.
Right. It's not that high, but
And this tapers right up into where that oak flat is on that knob, and where there was doe bedding, what looked like multiple pods of doe bedding on the top of that.
yep.
And these rubs are actually on both sides. They're marking both directions of travel.
That's a Dan rub, right?
It's a Dan rub.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Again, you know, you got height up here. A lot of the activity is down here, but this was from last year. That's a fresh one.
Yeah, I would say that was rut.
Yeah. But I'm thinking bedding as we push back into the thick more towards the river is where the bedding's going to be. The
So
bedding,
somewhere between there and here,
yeah, is where
you'd set up.
the bedding we're interested in
Yeah,
is located.
because they're going to come out of there.
And you know, you got to think of this. A hunter's going to come by this. He's going to be like, "Oh, there's a big rub here.
Set up right here.
There's a tree there. A tree there. I'm going to set up."
Got to think where they're bedding first.
You got to think where they're bedding, and you got to think the time of the year that they're using this, and how you're going to access. You know, if I set up right over the top of this, all my thermals are going to drop back into behind Rick, where we believe is where the good bedding is at.
That's why I like hunting the river so much, because you can use the river to take your scent.
Right, right. So let's go check it out. So I want you to picture a river running like this, and then there's a knob that forms a larger oxbow. All right, Rick and I are on this side of the knob. We're just getting to the lower corner of the knob, and right at that point where it's rather open in here because there's a few mature oaks and mature pines, but we got a generational scrape right here, and then directly behind me it's also marked with a rub. So we're just getting onto this knob that comes out. You think we hear some folks
Yeah,
cruising down the river on a kayak too.
kayak, or they're walking it maybe. It's kind of,
I can smell the summer barbecue from
Yeah.
somewhere. I think it's back there. All right, let's go. Two things that we got intel on this spot already. One, that right where this oxbow is, there's a human hiking trail that parallels the backside of it. We actually ran into two hikers that crossed the river and are heading out north to where the north parking lot is. So it's just something that we got to keep in mind. But right below this big dead ash tree, I got a dead ash tree to my left. Here's this bed. This is all matted down. The deer's laying on top of these broken branches. So we've got a bed that comes like this, and there's also a small bed right behind me here. So could be a mom fawn, could be a couple does and a smaller yearling, but they're bedding right underneath this tree in swamp grass. So we're about 50 yards from the trail.
mm-hmm.
So they'll bed in here, they'll tolerate, and they got the river to escape. And this is right in that oxbow.
Yep.
This is right in that oxbow.
Let's say we're, what, 30 yards from the river.
Yeah, 30 yards from the river and the oxbow. Pretty cool.
And there's a whole bunch of more grass going that way.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
right off to this side of me over here, there's another tree, and you can see where there's a hollow in there where this grass is matted down. So there's likely another bed in there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is all matted down. See, and one thing to know is before emerald ash borer hit and all these ash trees died, these were completely, you had all this leaf cover here. So
Yeah.
you actually had more cover from the elements, more cover from the sun. It was cooler in these spots. All in this oxbow where this tall grass is and these trees are, could hold bedding. Now it's kind of,
Right.
give and take. But this is an easy escape. They see danger coming in from here, get up, right across the river. But we can also access it from that side. You could get up in a tree there and look down into this bed. We'll kind of weave our way through here and check this out a little in this
Right.
outskirt to see what it looks like. Here's another spot right on the tip of that oxbow. Again, we're in that swamp grass. We got multiple big trees. This is right on the edge of the river. This is a worn down patch of land now. It's hard to really, I'm not seeing any hair in it right now that it's being used. But again, I look for the little details. The little details are things like this that are broken off and eaten, right? If I go
Look up.
back, right behind me, we've got browse on this stuff.
There's browse on that tree, right, going up the tree back there.
Yep. See, you've got buckthorn mixed in there, and they love to eat that buckthorn. All this stuff is nibbled off in here.
Yeah.
Browse, 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 browse. And you've actually got a mud trail that I can see hoof marks
Oh
that
yeah.
go down into the river right there.
Right there.
So they can get up. Bedded right here, they can get up, go take a drink right at the creek, come back in and sit right down into this bed. Problem is I'm staring right at where we entered,
Yeah.
and anywhere that's in line of sight, because there's so many dead ash, you just be able to get up to the top of that,
I'm going to show them.
and you're going to be skylighted. So I almost like hunting on the opposite side of the river of this.
Here's the transition line of the pines too.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Hunting from the other side is a good idea.
Now
From
this is
side.
a dry year too. On a wet year, this could be full of water as well. There's enough water in there to navigate that with a kayak, though. So we'll go back and we'll check out the last couple trees here, and then I think we'll skedaddle,
Okay.
go north. All right, so we're in the center of the oxbow. We're just coming out of bedding in the oxbow, and we hit this low patch, which is this wet, muddy area that normally probably on a wetter year is going to hold more water, like a watering hole. And we got a big old splayed track right here, and this has got crumbles of dirt in it too. So probably done. Like there's another one there, another one here. If you look at the gate of it, another one up there. It's good to see that. I mean, we know that there is deer bedding back there. They're coming to and from in this area. And this trail right here runs right back into there. So this is a primary access trail to that big bed that was right on the edge of the river. Yeah, that really nice bed was underneath that willow. Here's another one of those tracks coming in. Smaller one, it's soft, but
All over there too.
this is all tracks walking back in.
Into the grass.
It's all tracks walking back into the grass, into this oxbow. This oxbow was big. Probably spans 75 yards across, where all this grass is.
I would say it's farther than that.
Yeah. This is good. These tracks that are in here are from this past week.
Yeah. Because it rained the last couple of
It
days.
rained. Yeah. So there's deer going back in here. It's good. All right, we got another bed. This is matted down around this oak tree. Right here, this oak, Rick's got the river right behind him, and it's beat down dirt around this oak. There's bedding. And again, browse, 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 browse. If I come back a little further with me here, right on the back side of this elevation where you've got a down tree right here, here's a bed right here. This is all matted down. And this is a little bit fresher. This is being used.
Yes.
Again, not so, the other thing that tips me off is how this is browsed off. Browse here, all this is snapped. All this stuff is browsed off on here again, all around here. So deer could bed here, get up, feed, sit back down, get back up, walk around, feed, sit back down. It's got the wind going over its back, it's looking out in the river. It's a shallow part of the river, it could scoot right across that river to escape. But this makes a little bit of an incline going up in here, and it's really thick. There's a lot of overgrowth with buckthorn in here.
Might even be another bed up there.
Yeah, I mean, you could see this tree is old and rotted and gnarly, but right on the other side of it, this tree's got new growth, and you see this old rub here.
Yep.
So this buck could be bedded right in this spot. He could be bedded right in this spot, rubbing his antlers on this tree, feeding on the browse that's on the ground, get up, turn around, stretch his legs, sit back down again. Right, looking at the river, just chilling. I can feel the breeze coming over my backside too.
Mm.
Pretty interesting. And right over this side here is where Rick and I accessed in. That was coming right off that flat that had those pines. And then there was more oaks up there. It raised up about 50 feet in elevation, 50, 60 feet in elevation, and there was oaks in there. Oaks and a lot of green grass with trails cutting all through it. So your original idea that you had about pushing in a little bit more and setting up on the edge of those oaks, if we think about it, if this deer is bedded here next to the river, he gets up, he moves less than 50 yards to get to those oaks, and he's probably going to do it right at last light. So you got to be tight.
Yep.
And you got to be quiet. Cool. All right, Rick and I wanted to talk about this spot a little bit because the oxbow is behind us where we had all the beds. We hit that little low spot where we cut across a bunch of tracks, and now we're kind of into this staging area. There's multiple trails that kind of weave throughout here, but you can see in here where there's browse going on. Again, on a lot of this buckthorn. It's the one good thing, buckthorn. Deer like to eat it. So you can see where all this is browsed off. And fresh browse too, on the stuff that's new from this year. You can come over here. We've got it here, here, here. All this is fed down, and these trails weave all through here. All coming out of the oxbow. You can see back behind there has got all the swamp grass right on the edge of the river to our right that we were just in.
And it's still kind of thick in here too.
Right. It's thick, low, kind of cool area. You got plenty of cover.
Mm-hmm.
So they could get up out of bedding, walk to this, and stage. If I was going to hunt this based on wind, I'd want to try to get right on the transition of this to get them moving just at the end of daylight out of this safety area. Because you know that's going to be tough to get close to because line of sight. If they get up and move into here, then you want to hunt them just beyond this because they're just at that last light, they're going to be breaking out beyond this.
Plus we can get in here.
Right. So Rick and I probably scouted, how big do you think that area is we scouted?
I don't know, 40, 50 acres?
Yeah. Yeah, 50, 60 acres or so, somewhere in that.
Yeah.
The only thing that we focused on was transitions on the high and transitions on the low. One was along the river bottom and one was along the tops of these knobs that are accessing into the river bottom. Out of all the spots, I think we located like 3 areas. One up front where it's really thick on top as a potential doe bedding area between the 2 knobs. So doe bedding area on one knob, doe bedding area on another knob, and how the cross traffic happened there. The other area were 1, the big oxbow, and then 2 was a large, not so much an oxbow, but an area that got low with tall grass that had 2 large oaks in it.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those areas had multiple trails coming in and out. What we learned is that the southern side of it, where the oxbow is, definitely has much more human pressure. There's walking trails that are close to it, so access and setup, because of human pressure, are going to be a little bit more interesting. Pre-rut or rut, morning hunt in those locations, getting them coming late back to bedding to that oxbow might be something that's worthwhile. If these oaks are dropping acorns, coming and looping around in from the north and getting in on one of the access trails, because it's so thick in there, it'd be hard to get right on top of them to shoot into there. Might be an option early season to get them coming to those oaks. But again,
they got to be dropping.
This is the fun part about it. They got to be dropping and access to that because they're going to get up from bedding right on the river edge, and they're literally walking 50 yards to enter those oaks. So getting in a spot where you can cut them off or trying to cut off deer that are coming from behind us on those highs to walk down the oaks.
Right.
But now we know. You know, you look at this on a map, and we had all these ideas of, you know, what these areas would look like.
Yep. We didn't know the human trails would be there.
We didn't know that there would be that much human pressure on the one side,
Right.
and now we know. So, you know, we don't X off that southern side, but it's not as exciting because they're literally daily. We know the type of hiking that happens. Daily there could be people walking in there. But to the north, there's no natural hiking trails there, so no one's going back there. So it's a little bit more inviting. But yeah, what else? Any other thoughts?
I don't know, I did like the tall grass in the oxbow. If we got to the other side of the human trail, that may be a good spot to...
Yep. I like that, and I like the thick on the knob.
Yes.
The thick up on top of the knob, especially in the pre-rut. There was a lot of rubs up on that knob, which indicates to me that those bucks are running the perimeter of that, checking those doe bedding areas.
Totally.
Yeah. And the next highest concentration of rub was the wide open pine grove
Mm-hmm.
next to this area we're sitting in right now, where it drops down to a low and it gets all smaller saplings, buckthorn, mixed in with some larger maples and oaks, but it goes from no cover to cover, and there's a rub line that runs right up the side of that.
It does, but how close is the human trail to that one?
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah.
But so was
Depends.
that buck I shot last year was right off the human walking trail.
That's
So,
true. Very true.
yeah, it just depends. But that was a morning hunt in the pre-rut, you know,
Walkers really weren't out yet.
yeah,
So it could be a really good morning spot.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Good to try. All right, another place in the books.
All right. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We'll see you next time.